TikTok was just to the moon. So there's this, it's an amazing story. You probably have heard of it because it's one of those stories that it's made its rounds on the internet. So remember I told the 60-second version was gritty, but it had the pictures and stuff. So in 1959, there were these 9 hikers. Actually, there was 10. These 10 young, like 20-something-year-old hikers in Russia. And they were like the best mountaineers in Russia at the time. And they were going for what's called their level 3 hiking test, which sounds sort of lame, but it's effectively, at the time in Russia, this is like the top credential for mountaineers. If you have this credential, you are the best mountaineer in the land. And the way the test worked is effectively you're in a class of your own at this level already. It's sort of like being a PhD student where you sort of create your own material. You have to do that for this test. You map out a route that you'll take that, effectively checks off all the boxes of difficulty. You put this map down, somebody approves this is going to be hard enough that if you successfully navigate this course that you've mapped out in X amount of time, if you do that, you pass the test, you're a level 3 mountaineer. And so these 10 hikers, eventually actually only 9 left. One had a dental issue, so he spared himself. 9 of these hikers, they step out, I think it was in January of 1959, to do this hike that's been planned out. And they brought cameras along. And they're like this young, they're beautiful, they're all like couples, they're all friends. And it
sounds like an awesome opening to a horror movie.
This gets wild. If you've not heard this story, you're in for a treat because the pictures are crazy. They step out, and the Ural Mountains is rugged. It's like these huge, windswept, icy mountains. There's like a couple sections of forest, but it's just as rugged can be. And so these hikers step off, and they start taking pictures. And even though it's 1959, the pictures they're taking could be taken today. It's almost like selfie style. They're smiling. Everyone's in such good spirits. They know they're going to pass this test. This is nothing for them. This is a victory lap. And so off they go into the Ural Mountains. It's going to be like a multi-day hike, but they're expected to be out, or I guess finished with their route, I think on February 12th. So it's a several week-long hike, February 12th, and they were supposed to send some message to say they were complete with the hike. February 12th comes, and no message is sent. No one gets word that these 9 hikers have successfully navigated this treacherous stretch of the mountains. And at first, to be honest, no one was really that concerned because, one, there's 9 of them. They are quite literally some of the best mountaineers in the land. If anybody can withstand the elements, it's them. And so there wasn't this immediate call to action. But over the coming days after February 12th, the families of these 9 hikers got really concerned. They're like, we haven't heard from them. Where are they? One canvas tent that's right in the middle of this pass I believe it's called the Dyatlov Pass, which is why the mystery has been named the Dyatlov Pass. It's just one lone tent, and there's no trees, nothing. It's just, and so they go up to the tent. The hikers are not there, but the tent is collapsed, as you see in the picture there. And they look inside the tent, and there's clothes, like cold weather gear, there's pots, and there's a lot of equipment that you would imagine they would have brought with them out here is still in the tent. The hikers are missing. And they discover, through whatever testing they did, that there was a cut made in the tent that apparently was made from the inside out. Someone took a knife, and I believe it was a knife, and cut the tent open from the inside out. And so they have all this equipment, and they're thinking, we're in the middle of the Ural Mountains. It's like negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit out here. It's the middle of winter. You need this equipment to survive. Where are the hikers? They left all their equipment in their tent. Where are they? And so the search expanded exponentially at that point because now these volunteers have discovered this incredible site. They can't find the hikers. A bigger search party comes out there, and they discover footprints that are about 100 feet away from where the tent was found. It's a little bit further down the mountain. And the footsteps, some of them are 2 boots, matching boots of someone's steps. There's 8 or 9 prints. They couldn't be sure. 8 or 9 sets of prints. Some have only 1 boot on, like barefoot and a boot. Others are just barefoot. And remember, this is the middle of winter in Russia. But they're looking at these prints. And if you look at the tent, it's been cut from the inside. They've clearly abandoned their tent. Something's happened. But the cadence of the footprints as it picks up where they found it near the tent, going down the mountain away from the campsite, they're walking. There's no sense of urgency. Someone analyzed the footprints, and they're walking. So they're walking down the mountain, some without boots on, some with one boot on, leaving most of their equipment behind. And so the search party, they follow these prints down to the edge of this ominous looking forest, like he was eating his own flesh, or it at least arrived in his mouth. So they're dead. And so the search expands within this forest, and they find 3 more hikers sort of about 100 or 200 feet away from this tree. They're in similar condition. They're all deceased. They're all sort of ragged. Some of them are only wearing, a little bit of clothing. They're all dead, but they can't find the remaining 4 hikers. They continue to search for the next several days, but the weather was pretty severe, and so ultimately they decided that at this point it's a recovery mission. We're not going to find them. They're going to be dead. So they waited until the thaw in May, and once the snow had thawed a bit, they came out there and they found this, what looked to be like they believed that a snow fort had been made, maybe 300 or 400 feet away from that cedar tree, which they wouldn't have seen it during the winter. It was barely, you wouldn't have seen it, but it had melted down enough, and the rest of the bodies were found in the remnants of the snow cave. And the 4 hikers that were in there just had catastrophic injuries. They're all deceased. The woman, or one of them, had a crush injury. His chest they compared the injury to his chest equivalent to being struck by a car at high speed. However, he had no or limited lacerations, like there was no impact to his body. His chest was sort of just inexplicably caved in. And so he's been crushed. One guy, I think his skull was fractured and a piece of his skull was missing. But the one that stands out is there was one hiker, a woman, who her lips and her eyes were missing. And some accounts claim that the lips appeared to have been surgically removed. At least there was like very tight lines of how it was predation, animal predation, you'd see tearing.
Right.
This was like relatively straight lines where her lips were removed. And then another hiker, his eyes were also missing. And so they're all dead. And they also noticed that the woman was wearing men's clothing, or some clothing that was clearly not hers, exchanged clothing. And they found trace levels, albeit small, but trace levels of radiation on some of the clothing. And they're all dead. And so now all the hikers have been found. And by this point, this is in May of 1960, I believe it is at this point. This is a huge story in Russia. This is equivalent to being super viral today. Everybody was talking about it. The families are very outspoken about it. People want answers. They want to know what happened. And so the Russian government, they launched this investigation into what happened out there in the Dyatlov Pass. And quickly, they shut down this investigation. Like very quickly, they shut it down. And the only things people heard there were numerous reports from military personnel and some civilians who apparently were in the area, in the Urals, that claimed to have seen glowing orbs like fireballs. I think they described them as being balls of fire and light shooting up and down. It's hard to tell if it was in the same area where the hikers were, but there were all these independent reports of strange lights over the Ural Mountains that could corroborate or could line up with when those hikers all died. And then also, lastly, the Russian government came out and said, well, we've determined that the 9 hikers died from an overwhelming, or I think they called it a compelling force. And then they closed it. I believe they made it completely confidential. No, the families didn't get access to it. It's completely shut down. And then in 2020, the reason I told it is because it sort of began making rounds, because I believe some of the pictures had been redacted and you could see these pictures. And so I said at the start of my video, at the end of this 60-second clip, you're going to Google 2 words, and it was Dyatlov Pass. And so I teased the story and said, Google it for yourself, and it's a whole rabbit hole of crazy stuff.
That's a crazy story. So compelling force is a very weird way to describe a bunch of people dying. Compelling force?
It might have been compelling natural force, but
that makes more sense. You froze to death.
Well, the thing, they could have come out and said that.
Right.
They basically said, yep.
Are you sure it's not a translation issue?
There are several translations of how it came out, and it effectively amounts to some sort of compelling, overwhelming force, but from other locations just in the vicinity of where this is happening, because there was a lull before this. So it's just fucking madness. And I couldn't stand up. I can't move. And I got dragged by one of my teammates. So this is my memory. I got dragged from, I'm at the head of the T there. They brought me down the stem of the T, if you will. And I just got placed up against a wall. And I'm sitting there, And I have these tourniquets that are on my chest that we rubber band them to our chest specifically so they can be easily broken off and applied to stop the bleeding in your limbs. And I was so weak and fucked up from this blast that I literally couldn't pull the tourniquets off. And I don't even know if anyone's alive, basically, at this point. I don't even know what's happening down in the contact zone, which is like 20 feet away from me. All I hear is gunfire, it's madness. And at any point, I'm expecting fighters to run down the alleyway and fucking kill me. Like, I'm dead. I'm dead no matter what here. And so I had this true, in my mind, like near-death experience where I sat there. It's relatively well illumined, and I suddenly lost my hearing. Like, it's gone, completely gone. And there's good illumination, so I can see this small alleyway. I can see there's flashes of light as, you know, rounds are coming in. And I'm like, I'm in my head. I'm so aware that I'm alive, but I'm dying. And then my vision goes. I'm completely blind. Like, can't see, I can't hear anything. But I was so lucid in my mind, so aware that I was alive. And I tell people that on a day-to-day basis, you live and you don't think about it. You don't wake up and actively live. You don't think, today I'm going to breathe. Today my heart's going to beat. You just do it, because that's your entire experience, is being alive. And your body knows how to do that. Your brain knows how to be alive. You also know how to die. You just haven't done it yet. And I had this really distinct feeling of like, oh shit, this is what it feels like when you shut down. Coming in guns blazing, they throw us in the helo. Now get this, me and the other dude with the lung, we get thrown on the helo and we just leave with the medical team. Those fucking dudes, those 5 dudes, still on the ground, had to fight their way back into the city to go reconnect with the rest of the element, who again, he's calling, the airstrike he called in was perfect. I think he got an award for it. He hit exactly in the right spot. He called in the exact right spot, like under the most duress you could imagine. But like, so my mental image of what happened is under truly, like, I witnessed life and death. Like I was in a life and death scenario and I got to be fully an audience for it. Every motherfucker was fucking perfect at their job. Like literally rounds flying everywhere. Hey, what's going on? Up, got your legs all tied off here. Hey, what's going on? Calling this airstrike over. Couldn't be calmer. That was it. Like, and so my debrief point was, it fucking works. The training works.
Wow. What a fucking story. Holy shit, dude.
There's an addendum to it.
I want to hear the addendum.
Yeah, so after we got medevaced, so I'm in the helicopter, and at this point I don't know the state of my injury. All I know is a few minutes ago I thought I died. You know, like I'm happy to be here now. But we get in the helicopter, and that crew was amazing. I think they were PJs, Air Force PJs, which are like Spec Ops Air Force, I think. They were fucking great, but they were like, hey, do you want, what's the drug? Oh my God, it's the painkiller drug, morphine. And I said, no, I didn't have any pain, but I was like, I'm worried I might die, and I want to be lucid for it. And they're like, okay, no, I think you're going to be okay. But I was like in my head that I might die, I don't know. They made their camp there, and there's no one around. I mean, this is pristine wilderness, and they start sluicing for gold, and it's just fucking gold everywhere. It's like the sand is gold. There's gold everywhere. They find so much gold, and they can't believe it. They've struck it completely rich here. And so after a whole day, I think they did 3 days even, of just getting all this gold, they pack all their shit back up in their boat that they've assembled, and they begin making their way back out again, which should be easier, because now I think a lot of it you're going with the current. I don't even know how they get up there with the rapids going one way. But either way, they begin making their way out, and their boat capsizes, and they lose all their gold. The boat breaks up. They narrowly are able to salvage the pieces, and they come ashore, and they build their boat again, and they're like, oh my gosh, we've lost so many supplies. Like, this is horrible. You know, the best we can do here is leave and come back with more supplies, because we know there's gold here. Like, this is devastating, but no one's going to be here. We can come back, we can get more gold. So they leave, and once they get back to town, Charlie, one of the brothers, decides, you know what, it's not worth it. That was really sketchy. I don't want to die out on the Flat River. You know, Frank and Willie, they're like, we got to go out there. And so fast forward a year, Charlie's still saying, I will not go back out there, but Frank and Willie, they decide to go. And they recruit this other guy, I think his name is Robert Weir. And so the 3 of them go back into the valley to strike it rich are caves that no human has ever stepped foot in. You can't even get to these fucking caves. And because of the way the wind cuts through the canyon, it makes this echoey, like screeching noise that today you can still hear as you go through these canyons. And so they're going through Second Canyon, this stretch here. And the stretch of Flat River where he had been the year prior or 2 years prior with his brothers was at the end of Second Canyon, where the first little, call it a beachhead, exists. And so he, Charlie, and his search party, they exit this creepy Second Canyon, and they see there's a campsite set up on the beach. And it's not really a beach. It's like, 4 feet of sand, and then it's a little bit of hinterland, and then it's just, forest. But he sees there's a tent. And so they beach the boat, and they're looking around, and they find there's two bodies. It's a man, two men. They're badly decomposed, but they're missing their heads. So there's two headless men that are badly decomposed, one of which is reaching for his rifle, and he's half in the tent, half out of the tent, and he's reaching for his rifle, which is propped up against a tree, and the other is just lying behind the tent, and he's missing his head. The heads were never found. And they find identification, and it turns out those are his two brothers. And they find etched into the tree that the gun was propped on. It just was written, etched into the wood, we have found a fine prospect, which could mean any number of things. Maybe it means they found gold, whoever. But that was written on the tree. And then a little ways down from their camp, going along the same direction they'd come in, they found a skeleton, which they could never identify as being anyone, but they believe it belonged to Robert Weir. So they're all dead. And the authorities, when this was reported, they weren't really shocked. They're like, it's the Nahanni Valley. It's a dangerous place. They obviously died of starvation, and animal predation caused, their heads to be ripped off. Tough luck. Charlie didn't believe that. He always believed that something had happened to his brothers, but he had no way to prove it. So that's 1905. Fast forward to 1913, people sort of know about this story, that this is when they dubbed it the Headless Valley, because these men were found without their heads. And he builds himself a cabin not far from where the McLeod brothers had stayed, and then the second expedition as well. And he is out there for the summer, but then he misses the rendezvous point. He was supposed to come out of the valley and meet his partners at the end of the summer. He doesn't. Eventually, a search party is brought out to find what happened to him, and they find his cabin had burned to the ground. They find Martin Jorgensen is within the remains of this burned down cabin, missing his head.
Jesus.
And I don't know how they did this in 1913, but apparently the fire began on the roof. And so they don't understand how he could have not realized there was a problem and exited his cabin. I mean, it's simplifying it, but it's an odd thing that fire starts here and you still burn to the ground. And also, where's your head? So that's Martin Jorgensen. So now people, they aren't really connecting the McLeod brothers and Martin Jorgensen. It was called the Headless Valley by the time Martin Jorgensen gets into the valley. He's now found headless, and now it's like there's a little more rumor mill going on. Over the coming next 10 years, there was several other expeditions, to include this guy Riley O'Brien, who goes out there, prospector. He goes out to check his traps, doesn't come back. His partner who's with him, he walks over and finds him, and he's just sitting inexplicably by a campfire that's not on. It's not even, it was cold. It was cold enough to freeze to death out there, but it was not blindingly cold. And he's sitting in front of this fire pit. It's only been like an hour or two since he stepped away. A hunting party goes out to look for him, and they can't find him. And on the last night they were there, one of the men who was part of this search party for John Patterson, they're near the Flat River, he described an indigenous man walked out of the tree line, just sort of inexplicably walks over to him, and he comes up to the group who are sort of on the beach line there. And he just says to this guy, he's like, hey, and they're startled to see him to begin with. Like, where the fuck did you come from? And he's like, be careful. The Wahila are out tonight. And the guy just like wanders. This is, according to legend, this is what was said to him. And the guy wanders back off into the trees. But the leader of that expedition, they were planning to stay, I want to say 2 additional days to keep looking for John Patterson. But that night, following that comment made by that guy, the indigenous guy, all night, they reported these ungodly screams and screeches coming from that canyon, Second Canyon, where those caves up in the cliffs were, all around the forest, like unearthly sounds were being made that scared them so badly that the next day they said, we're not looking for John Patterson anymore, and they bailed. There's so much legend surrounding the Nahanni Valley, in part because the Naha tribe that had lived there was this story I mentioned at the beginning that they apparently abandoned the valley after something happened, and people have always attributed it to the legend of the Wahila, that somehow these creatures must have forced them to leave the valley. And so combine that with all of the actual deaths that occurred by the 1940s, when John Patterson went missing, and when that guy said, who was part of that search party, that the indigenous guy warned him of the Wahila. This was a big enough story that like Time magazine did something in, I think, the 1940s about like what the fuck is happening in the Nahanni Valley. Like, why are so many people dying out there? So I wonder if the people who were there, maybe they heard some strange sounds that night, who knows? But who's gonna verify whether or not there really was someone who warned them about the Wahila? We don't know.
Right.
But that's the report that was given. Somebody claimed that an indigenous man sort of came out of nowhere, said, watch out for the Wahila tonight, and then that night they heard all these screeches and
The reason why
they called it in.
asking is like maybe it was indigenous people that just didn't want these other guys coming
the fuck
through,
outta
and
here.
so they created this thing by cutting off their heads and killing these people. And
It's a great deterrent.
yeah,
Well, like, maybe it's not, because a lot of people went back.
well, maybe less than would have,
Fair.
considering how much gold there was there.
Yeah, that's actually that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get rid of
white people. You know, cut a few heads off.
Yeah, dude, create
Tell
an
them
urban
there's
legend.
ghosts.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I find myself, even to this day, unbelievable that when you look at our problems and you look at the things that we focus on and like our gripes day to day and our conflicts with the world, if you just zoom out and you realize it's not just that we might not be alone, it's that we might be insignificant.
I don't think we're insignificant.
I
think,
hope not.
I think what humans are is a latter stage of intellectual development amongst multicelled organisms, and that it's not the end stage. And I think there's probably life out there that doesn't have as chaotic a solar system, that developed in a different way, that achieved very high levels, probably above and beyond anything we could even imagine what we are. And it might not even be biological anymore, which is the direction that I think we're heading into. But I also think that what we do to animals, I mean, look at what we're doing right now, okay? My friend Ben Lamb, he owns Colossal Bioworks. So Colossal, the ones that brought back the direwolf.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was huge news.
Crazy.
Crazy, dude.
I've seen them in real life.
I think I saw it in your post. Yeah, that's crazy.
Went to visit them, and my daughter was holding the 4-month-old.
Oh my God.
And it was like kissing her and loving on her like a puppy. And it's a
Wow.
it's a little baby wolf. It's really crazy. Just think of what we do with genetic engineering, with the current technology, which is right now evolving and getting much more powerful. If you could imagine us not 1,000 years from now, but even 100,000 years from now, how advanced we are. And if we go to a planet and we find some chimps, and we say, wow, how much time would it take before these chimps could become something special? As a guy who's been in war and been in combat, you know about it more than anybody. And the idea that we can never get past that is crazy. It is really crazy that if you ask the average person that's, you know, even fairly well read, what are the odds that within your lifetime we'll see no war? Everyone will say 0.
It's a 0.
Right? That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if you and me and Jamie were the only people left on Earth, what are the odds we would go to war with each other? Like fucking 0?
Yeah.
As long as we have resources, we just hang out and have a good time. And
Yeah, why would
go,
we?
fuck, I miss everybody. All right, good night.
Well, it's like, it's got to be tribalism. It has to be tribalism.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's primate tribalism. It's based on our territorial instincts, and it's also just based on this weird desire to control resources and greed, and not recognize the fact that we have a finite life. And also just the abuse of power. Human beings love to be in power, and especially if you can be in power and get other people to fight for you and mandate them and force them to fight for you. You know, that's one of the weirdest things about some of these tech companies. Like Palantir was talking about reinstating the draft. And I'm like, hey, who the fuck are you? Like, what is this? Like, you think you want to draft people because you think war? What? Are you a fucking tech company?
Yeah, how's that work?
Right? So, like, do you want to go fight? Why don't you go fight? Why don't you fucking take your glasses off and go over there? Like, what are you talking about? So it's like the people that have the kind of power and control and resources that they can just take poor people and take young people and say, you should go over there. You should go do this. You should. Well, I sit here and watch. I'm going to watch on a screen in Nevada while the drone operator is using a fucking Xbox controller to nuke some building.
Oh,
like,
man.
what?
When I was in Afghanistan, when I was there, you got to remember that I really just gone through training. You know, I training takes a couple of years. I got to a team, and then very quickly I was in a workup and was going to Afghanistan.
Those people knew that they were cooperating with the U.S. government.
Very
they
true.
were likely to be killed.
Very true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I got to ask you this, because you did serve in Afghanistan and you're into creepy stories. Did you hear about the Kandahar Giant?
Oh yeah,
I haven't seen
myself.
that episode.
So
Did you hear about it when you were over there?
So I did. I talked to one of our interpreters when I was over there because I had heard of it. Because I told you in my own personal time, I find myself researching and learning about all sorts of crazy stuff like Dark Five, and so the Kandahar Giant it's a fascinating story, and it's one that people can poo-poo it all they want, but there's enough circumstantial evidence and testimony that suggests something could have happened. So there's this guy, I think he was a Green Beret. And he goes by like W on the internet. He's like sort of anonymized himself, but he came forward with this story where he described he and his battalion had been tasked to go find these missing, I think, Army Rangers. You gotta give me some grace in the details. I haven't told this in a minute, but there were these Army Rangers that had gone missing up in the mountains in Kandahar. And so this guy W, who years later is telling the story to I think a reporter or something. He and his platoon, they head off into the mountains to go find these guys. And if you're not familiar with the landscape of Afghanistan, it's like a desert but a mountain everywhere. It's like it looks like the surface of Mars or something. You're looking out and it's both stunningly beautiful in that there's snow-capped mountains off in the distance, and but it's also it's jagged, it's sharp, it looks like just a rugged place to be. And they're hiking through the mountains, and eventually they come across, and there's nothing. There's no structures, nothing. They're hiking along this trail up on the side of the mountain, and they see what looks like metal. I think it's like a military grade metal, like a piece of a radio or something. And so this guy W and his crew, they find what appears to be remains of like literally a radio. It's a government issued radio, and there's a goat trail that heads up this mountain. And so they follow the goat trail, and as they're going, they're finding more and more little bits of an antenna. There's a piece of somebody's backpack that's got there's a camo backpack. So there's remnants of somebody being out here, military. We don't know who it is. They can't hear anything. They're calling out. They have no comms with anybody in the area. They go up this little goat trail, and they get to this plateau, and they see, as I recall it, just like equipment everywhere, and there's like bones. Been to Afghanistan, certainly not encountering any giants. You see parts of Afghanistan that really do look like you're on another planet. I mean, it's really these crazy just mountains everywhere, and you see these cave systems, where typically combatants would hide out in. But what I tell people is, well, I don't know if the Kandahar Giant is real or not.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's great.
It's fun.
If there were a place where a giant could still be hiding out, or giants could still be technically unproven, it's Afghanistan. Because, dude, that's a different world over there. There aren't people wandering around Afghanistan looking for giants.
He's listed as 8 feet tall, but I think 7'6" is probably a more recognized number. He went viral in 2019 for showing up in India and looking for a hotel at a cricket match.
Bro, look at his face. Look at that. Go to that photo over there of him right above there. Yeah. Bro. But that guy looks like he has giantitis. He looks like he has a pituitary gland problem, like Andre the Giant.
There's another tall guy, too. This guy's 8'3".
Oh, my God.
Whoa. And he's from Turkey.
Yeah, but see, look, this guy's hurting. He can barely walk around. He's probably got a disease that's forcing him to just excrete too much growth hormone. Just like Bigfoot Silva. Bigfoot Silva was an MMA fighter.
Boat flips over. The boat flips over, and Harrison...
I do know this story. I do know the story.
And he ends up walking down the upturned hallway, and he finds an air pocket inside of
Yes.
like the bathroom. And for 60 hours, he sat in total darkness, half submerged in water, sipping a Coca-Cola, waiting for the pocket to implode. And then there's the video. There's a video of the recovery divers as they're going in to find bodies. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're going in here to find them. And then a hand reaches down and grabs them. It's like one of the most incredible stories I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But Harrison O'Keefe, I wonder what it was like in terms of like true primal fear. You're 100 feet at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh.
I've heard some stories that he even described the sound of sea life bumping around in the upturned vessel. So like the sound of sharks likely eating the bodies of your buddies. And you're thinking at any point, the pocket's going to collapse. For 60 hours he waited, and he survived, and now he's no longer working on a tugboat. He stays on land.
Yeah, I would imagine.